Welcome to Grandma's Mind's Embrace Love with Stoic Wisdom. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that quiet tension, that uneasy silence when you're alone? No distractions, no noise, just you and your thoughts. Most men run from that silence. They jump from one relationship to the next, terrified of facing themselves. They cling to someone, anyone, just to avoid being alone. But the truth, the man who embraces that silence transforms. Because in that stillness, something powerful happens. The noise fades, the pressure to impress, to prove yourself, to seek approval. It all disappears, and what's left? Clarity, strength, control. The longer a man walks this path alone, not out of bitterness, but by choice, the more powerful he becomes. His mind sharpens, his standards rise, his focus becomes relentless. This isn't about rejecting love, it's about rejecting weakness. It's about mastering yourself so that when you finally choose to let someone into your life, it's not out of desperation, it's from a place of power. Today, we're going to uncover why solitude isn't something to fear. It's the key to becoming unstoppable. All right? If you're ready, let's dive in. Breaking free from approval. Seeking one. Breaking free from approval seeking. Most men live their lives. Chasing approval, they shape their words to avoid judgment. They hide their true thoughts to keep the peace. They bend their standards, hoping to be accepted, and they don't even realize they're doing it. They text back faster than they should, just to seem interested. They agree to things they don't believe in, just to avoid conflict. They say yes when they should say no, all because they're terrified of being disliked, ignored, or forgotten. But a man who has embraced solitude, he breaks free from this trap. He no longer wakes up wondering, am I good enough? Instead, he asks, do I respect myself? And that shift from seeking approval to building self-respect changes everything, because the moment you stop chasing validation is the moment you begin command it, when you no longer feel the need to prove yourself. People start noticing you without effort when you stop asking, am I liked? You start asking, am I proud of the man I'm becoming? And that's the paradox. The less you seek approval, the more it naturally finds you. Women sense it. They can feel when a man is grounded, when he's calm, composed, and in control, not because he's trying to impress her, but because he's focused on something far greater himself. That kind of presence is magnetic, and here's why most men are desperate to be chosen. They jump through hoops, soften their words, and shrink their standards, all in the hope that someone, anyone, will pick them. But a man who values himself, he doesn't lower his voice to fit in. He doesn't trade his standards just to gain approval. He stands firm, and that strength, that quiet, unshakable confidence makes people pay attention, because when you stop chasing, you become the man who's chosen. When you stop explaining yourself, you become the man who's respected. And when you no longer need someone to like you, you become the man who's admired. That's real power, not arrogance, not ego, just a calm, quiet belief in your own worth. The kind of belief that makes people want to know who you are. So if you've spent your life chasing approval, stop seeking attention, stop bending your standards, stop shrinking yourself just to feel accepted. Instead, ask yourself one question. Am I living in a way that makes me proud? Because when you focus on building that, on becoming a man of integrity, strength and purpose, the need for validation disappears. And the moment you stop needing approval, that's when you'll start to command it. 2, raising your standards. Raising your standards with confidence, When you stop chasing approval, something powerful happens, your mind clears, you're no longer desperate to be liked, so you stop bending, shrinking and compromising just to keep people around. And in that clarity, your standards rise not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. You stop tolerating people who drain your energy. The friends who take more than they give, the relationships that leave you feeling empty. the people who only show up when they need something. You see it all for what it is, noise, and you refuse to let that noise distract you anymore. The same happens with women. You stop chasing women who bring nothing to your life. The ones who play games, the ones who expect you to prove your worth, while offering nothing in return. You no longer waste your time with shallow connections because you understand that your time is too valuable to be spent on things that don't move you forward. Instead, you become deliberate, selective, powerful, you know what you want, and more importantly, you know what you won't tolerate. And this shift changes everything. Because when a man has clear standards, when he values himself enough to walk away from people who don't align with his values, his entire presence shifts. He doesn't argue, he doesn't beg, he doesn't play games. If a woman starts pulling away to test him, he doesn't chase if someone disrespects him. He doesn't explain himself. He moves on, not with anger, not with bitterness, with calm indifference, because he knows his value. And that's what makes him powerful. Most men are afraid to set standards because they fear being alone. They think if I'm too strict, no one will stay. But when you raise your standards, when you hold firm to your values, people don't walk away. The wrong ones do, the selfish ones, the disrespectful ones, the ones who are never meant to stay in your life anyway. But the right people, they step up because a man with standards, a man who carries himself with quiet strength, commands respect without even asking for it. Women feel it, they can tell when a man isn't desperate, when he's perfectly willing to walk away rather than compromise his values. And that's the kind of man they chase because deep down, everyone respects the man who refuses to bend. So if you've been shrinking yourself to fit in, if you've been tolerating people who drain you, if you've been chasing relationships that don't inspire you, stop, raise your standards, because when you start living like a man who values himself, when you stop accepting less than you deserve, you'll discover something incredible. You don't lose people, you just stop keeping the wrong ones. Number 3, mastering emotional strength. Strength. Most men crumble under pressure. They react without thinking. They snap when they're tested. They panic when things don't go their way. Why? Because they're ruled by their emotions. Anger controls their words. Fear controls their choices. Loneliness controls their relationships. But a man who has mastered solitude, he's different. He's faced his darkest thoughts, sat with them, wrestled with them, mastered them. And because of that, he no longer reacts like a man who's controlled by his feelings. When someone provokes him, he doesn't flinch when a woman pulls away. He doesn't beg when life throws chaos his way. He doesn't panic because his strength doesn't come from the approval of others. It comes from within. And that kind of strength, it's rare. Most men will never reach it, not because they're weak, but because they refuse to sit alone long enough to build it. They drown their fears and distractions. They bury their insecurities in relationships. They avoid the silence because the silence forces them to confront what's broken inside. But the man who embraces that silence grows stronger than anyone expects. He learns to pause before reacting. He learns to think before speaking. He learns to walk away from disrespect, not out of fear, but out of power. And when you carry that kind of calm, that steady, unshakable presence, something powerful happens. People respect you. Women sense it immediately. The quiet strength of a man who isn't swayed by her moods or her mind games. A man who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't need anything from her, because he's already whole. Weak men fold under pressure. They crumble when tested. They trade their dignity for a woman's attention. But a man who has mastered his emotions, he becomes untouchable. No insult can break him. No manipulation can control him. No moment of rejection can shake him, because he's no longer fighting for approval. He's standing firm in his own self-respect. And that's why emotional strength is the greatest power you can have. because once you master yourself, no one can take that power away from you. So if you're feeling desperate, if you're feeling out of control, if your emotions have been running your life, step back, step into the silence, because the man who can face himself, the man who can walk through the fire of solitude without running, that man becomes a force no one can shake. And when you reach that point, you won't just survive the storms of life, you'll command them. Number 4, unlocking, laser, sharp. Unlocking, laser, sharp. Focus, focus. Most men live in distraction. Their minds bounce from one craving to the next, scrolling through social media, chasing attention, wasting time on shallow conversations that go nowhere. Not because they want to, but because they've forgotten what focus feels like. But a man who steps away from this chaos, a man who embraces solitude, he's different when a man stops wasting energy on empty relationships, when he no longer pours his time into meaningless connections. His mind sharpens like a blade. The mental fog lifts, his thoughts become clear. His priorities come into focus. Suddenly he's no longer asking, "What should I do?" He knows exactly what matters most. His mission, his growth, his purpose. While others scroll, he builds. While others chase, he sharpens his skills. While others waste their days in distraction, he's stacking wins day after day, brick by brick, creating a life of power and discipline. And here's the secret. Most people never learn when your focus locks in, when your mind is free from the noise. Success doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable because focus is a superpower in a world full of distraction. It's the man who can sit down alone and commit himself fully to his craft, his vision, his purpose, who becomes unstoppable. This is why the man who embraces solitude rises faster than the rest. He's not wasting his time chasing people who don't respect him. He's not distracted by shallow relationships that drain his energy. Instead, every hour he once spent chasing approval, he now invests in mastering his skills. Every minute he once wasted on mindless conversations, he now pours into building his body, his mind, his future. And when you stack those focused hours day after day, something powerful happens. You begin to move differently. Your presence changes. Your energy becomes stronger. People start to notice you, not because you're begging for their attention, but because you've built yourself into a man they can't ignore. Women feel it. They sense when a man is driven, when his mind is locked in on something greater than temporary pleasure. And suddenly, the same people who once overlooked you, they're drawn to you, not because you chase them, but because you've become a man who no longer needs them. This is the power of focus, the power that only comes when you stop wasting your life on distractions and start building something real. So if you've been feeling lost, if you've been spending too much time chasing what doesn't matter, step back, step into the silence, because the man who can sit alone, fully committed to his mission, doesn't need to find success. Success will find him. Number 5, choosing relationships. Choosing relationships on your terms. On your terms, most men don't choose their relationships. They fall into them. They settle because they're afraid of being alone, afraid of rejection, afraid they won't find someone better, and that fear makes them weak. They tolerate disrespect just to avoid being single. They compromise their values just to feel accepted. They silence their voice just to keep the peace. But a man who's embraced solitude, he's different. He doesn't chase relationships. He chooses them deliberately, carefully on his terms, because he's not looking for someone to complete him. He's already whole, and that's what separates powerful men from the weak majority. The man who spent time alone refining his mind, sharpening his focus and building his purpose doesn't tolerate nonsense. He's seen what happens when men sacrifice their dignity just to hold on to someone who doesn't respect them, and he refuses to be that man. He knows his time is valuable, his energy is sacred, His presence is a privilege, not something to be given away freely. So if a woman brings drama instead of peace, he's gone. If she demands that he lower his standards, he walks away. Not with anger, not with bitterness, with calm and indifference. Because the man who's mastered solitude doesn't fear being alone. He thrives in it. And here's the truth that most men never realize the moment you stop needing a relationship is the moment you become the kind of man women can't ignore. Because a man who isn't desperate commands respect. Women sense when a man isn't swayed by her games, when he doesn't cling, doesn't beg, doesn't lose himself just to keep her interested. And that's powerful because a man like that is rare. Most men crumble the moment a woman pulls away. They chase harder. They panic. They break their own rules just to feel wanted. But a man who values himself above all, that he doesn't flinch. He knows there's nothing more attractive, nothing more powerful than a man who stands firm in his standards and walks away when those standards aren't met because he's not afraid to be alone. He's not seeking love to fill a void. He's building a life so strong, so full, so meaningful that only the right woman will earn her place in it. And that's the difference. So if you're tired of chasing, if you've been lowering your standards just to feel accepted, stop, step back, focus on yourself, because the man who builds his mind, who sharpens his discipline, who finds peace in his own company, that man doesn't need a relationship. And that's exactly why he becomes the man women fight to be. With solitude isn't emptiness. It's where conclusion strength is forged. Every hour spent in silence sharpens your mind. Every moment spent alone strengthens your resolve. Every second you resist, chasing what's easy is a second invested in building something unshakable yourself. The longer you embrace solitude, the clearer your vision becomes, the stronger your mind grows, the more powerful your presence feels. And when you finally choose to let someone into your life, it's not out of need, it's out of choice, because by then you're not looking to be completed. You're already whole, so don't fear the silence. Embrace it, because the man who can sit alone, calm, focused and disciplined is the man. No one can break, and when you master that, you don't just survive life storms. You command them. Thanks for joining. Grandma's Minds today. Stay strong, stay grounded, and until next time, keep cultivating your inner strength. We'd love to hear your thoughts or suggestions for future topics. So drop a comment below. See you in the next video.